Hey guys, thanks for stopping by to watch another video here at All I See Is W. In today's video, I'd like to talk about price predictions with Bitcoin. We'll cover technical and fundamental analysis with MicroStrategy. We'll also talk about where I think the price would be for the big three Bitcoin miners. That's Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot. I'll go through just latest updates as well as share with you my technical analysis. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing to this channel so that I could continue to add value and grow this YouTube channel here. So first off, just wanted to talk about the recent updates with Donald Trump now in the White House post inauguration. We've seen a number of executive orders being signed. Trump isn't slowing down. Everything's moving at fast and furious speed. We got the crypto executive order. There was restriction on centralized uh, crypto banking to be established, as well as having bank flexibility with custody. This really opens the eyes of financial institutions being more attracted to having Bitcoin as a custody. So this really changes the dynamics as well as how accounting balance sheet gets reported during earnings report, where now with this SAB change to the accounting regulation, companies don't even have to report the Bitcoins as a liability on their balance sheet. So this really changes how companies, financial institutions look at Bitcoin. I think 2025 is a year where we're going to see a lot of companies really start adopting the Bitcoin reserve. We see that across the states in the US, as well as here in multiple countries all around the world. It's really global game theory right now, especially with the limited supply of Bitcoin of over 1 million Bitcoins. Now, let's go ahead first and get started where I wanted to talk about price of Bitcoin. So we see consistent Bitcoin price now at 105,000. In fact, Bitcoin reached a milestone where the price stayed above 100,000 for over a week now. That shows consistent consolidation. I think that we're going to see the next gap up, especially with all of these moving catalysts going on with Trump now as a pro crypto administration. I think we're going to see the next gap up possibly in Q1. We may see 130K, but just with all of the price forecast, we may very well see Bitcoin price get up to 200K in 2025. Let's take a look at this visual here with the Bitcoin rainbow chart. Post having happened in April of 2024, we haven't even got through a year yet, but what this is telling us is that we're still in that accumulation phase right now in that green rainbow zone. We haven't got to that yellow, orange, and red hue yet, which is expected during every cycle. So key takeaway here is that in 2025, we're going to see Bitcoin go through all-time highs, achieving new milestones, looking at this visual chart here. Let's take a look at just updates with MicroStrategy. So a lot of shorters took advantage with MicroStrategy just with the recent news last week in that MicroStrategy may have to pay taxes about $19 billion of unrealized Bitcoin gains. Now, to me, I think all of this is just really fake news. Even with the prior administration, there was talks about having people potentially pay unrealized gains on stocks that have increased in value, even though you haven't sold. To me, all of this is just speculation, especially with Donald Trump as a crypto friendly administration. This may just wipe out all of this speculation here. And I don't even think that MicroStrategy will even have to pay 19 billion. It's just an article that was released on Wall Street, which the shorters took advantage of. Let's take a look at just on X here. So Micro Sailor, he posted today, don't stop thinking about tomorrow. And what I find interesting is that every week now, I think it's going to be the 12th consecutive week where MicroStrategy will buy Bitcoin by tomorrow. I think what's interesting is every dot is a star, every dot is a galaxy, every dot is a Bitcoin purchase. Now, all of these green dots you see here, just consistent buying. But I think that the key takeaway here is, just looking at Michael Saylor's business model as the the black hole, sucking up all of the cash that he can and just using that cash to buy up Bitcoin. I think that it's really working, and that's why there's no second best. Looking at just with this posting on X a couple of days ago, now we have, over 12 states that are trying to push for strategic Bitcoin reserve, stemming from Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Utah, Arizona. It's this long list here, but I think eventually we'll get up to even, 30 states at one point, 50 states. It might be all saturated all around the US here. So I think it's really going to be a conforming push where the whole entire country is going to be pushing for Bitcoin to really be the stockpile country to hold on the most amount of Bitcoin to combat inflation. And this is really going to drive up price of Bitcoin. And what does that mean? MicroStrategy and other companies take advantage and they win. Let's take a look at MicroStrategy's Bitcoin Refinery. So, what's interesting is you think of this Bitcoin refinery, you can use the analogy of a vacuum sucking up all of that cash, similar to the black hole in outer space, sucking up all that cash to buy up raw Bitcoin. And in order to meet the needs of different customers, whether you have higher risk or you have lower risk appetite, such as getting dividend payouts, or you want, a higher leveraged ETF, such as MSTU. That's basically MicroStrategy on steroids, where you have potential upside 2x of what volatility we see with MicroStrategy is, along with option trading and equity, including in convertible bonds. So all of that raw Bitcoin that's purchased using that lever to establish different techniques through wrap Bitcoin, and that really helps MicroStrategy be able to be a service for all of the shareholders and customers that they are working with. So with this strategy, MicroStrategy continues to buy up Bitcoin, and you see here just with the current HODL here, so almost to about 500,000 of Bitcoin. IBIT is leading the charge. Vanguard, no, actually, I'm sorry. BlackRock does have so much cash. They are a financial institution, but it's great to see MSTR like right neck to neck here. I mean, they're a corporation, so there's no other corporation that has this amount of Bitcoin. But you see here, eventually, Fidelity is going to try to catch up. You even see ARK Investments. But what's key is BlackRock. They're just buying up Bitcoin because they have that similar philosophy as MicroStrategy. But you look at like the miners, you have like Mara, Riot, CleanSpark, which we'll be covering as well. These miners, they can mine at a fixed cost. So that's one of the unique sides about these companies with upside, in addition to also being able to buy Bitcoin similar to the MSTR playbook. We'll cover all of those updates. But first, we'll go through more updates before we talk about technical analysis of like MSTR and the miners here. Let's take a look at announcement with Mara in that they announced their Bitcoin production data in early January. And just to keep in mind that come next week, we'll get more updates on their January production data. But what's interesting is that their Bitcoin holdings is close to about 45,000. They actually mined close to 10,000 Bitcoins in the year 2024. But key takeaway here is November, they mined 907 Bitcoins. And December, they mined 890 Bitcoins. I think that in January, we may see it go above 900. Key thing here is that they mine at a fixed cost, much lower price. For just paying the wattage to mine. So definitely average costs for Bitcoin is much lower than actually buying Bitcoin, although they did use a 2 billion convertible note to buy up Bitcoin, getting their HODL up to close to 50,000. But I think in terms of where we are with Mara being the number one Bitcoin miner with the most amount of hash rate and really good fleet efficiency, Mara is here to stay. And from those fundamental updates, we could very well see price continue to go up, especially with the February announcements, with earnings reports starting with MicroStrategy, CleanSpark, and then Mara and Riot. Let's take a look at another Bitcoin miner here, a pure miner, CleanSpark. So what's happening here is that we're we're seeing some bullish signals here in that the company, I mean, it dropped recently down to about $9 and it's been, having a reverse pattern now at like the 1165. You have like Cantor Fitzgerald having price targets of like $23. So you see that upside of like 100%. And, other analysts are raising their price targets to $24. JP Morgan, raising their price targets $17. HC Wainwright stating their buy rating of $27 with an average of $23 for all these analysts here. But you see there, that's over 100% gain. I think that's just on a conservative approach. I do see CleanSpark has huge potential with 3 to 5x in the year 2025 here. You also see here that Secure Asset Management, they recently just bought up CleanSpark shares here. They bought 102,000 shares valued at close to $1 million. I think a lot of these companies are taking advantage of the buy low and eventually be able to sell high. Fundamentals look good. Earnings report is really going to drive price action. So this, company took advantage before the announcement of like MSTR earnings report February 5th, as well as CleanSpark at the same time. So that dual catalyst is really going to drive prices up. Let's take a look at another Bitcoin miner, Riot Platforms. This company has about close to 18,000 Bitcoins on their balance sheet. That's including mining Bitcoin, close to about over 500 Bitcoins per month at a fixed cost, somewhere around, mid 30,000 per Bitcoin, as well as also buying up Bitcoin similar to what Mara and MSTR did. But what's interesting here is that they announced potential pivoting into AI HPC use with its remaining 600 megawatts at the company's Corsicana facility for artificial intelligence and high performance computing uses. What we know is that Trump signed a $500 billion deal with Starboard to drive innovation in the United States. That's partnering up, companies like Oracle, OpenAI, ChatGPT creator, as well as, just working with the top-notch companies right now. Also backed with SoftBank with that, amount of money that was invested in return in 4 years, $500 billion return on investment. That's why we had that big investment. But overall, this is really going to drive innovation so that US can be the powerhouse for AI and crypto, according to Donald Trump. So what does this mean? Share price, I think from a fundamentals perspective, with earnings report demonstrating that share price, you know, just with, having increased revenue profit margins, that demonstrates that not only MSTR and the miners are a business in terms of being able to make, money, pivoting into a high demand sector like AI is really gonna, drive the price up. I see 3 to 5x potential. But let's take a look at just technicals here. So MSTR 550 here, we saw that bleed out over like 6 weeks back in December, but I think things are beginning to tighten up. As we zoom in here, the recent price action that we saw just for last week, it's been going down, but I do think that we're going to see that V shape up. The market reacted off of, potential dilution as well as that unrealized gains that MSTR may have to pay. But I think earnings report coming up, as well as just with the continuous downward trajectory recently, we're going to see some, heavy inflows, V shape up here, getting back up into that $400 range in the near term, and then retest 550 before we see 1200 potentially in the year 2025. Let's take a look at Mara here. So with Mara, why I like Mara is that technicals, it topped off at $30 early December, dropped down 50%, support established at $16, basement low. I don't think it's going to even go any lower than that, but we're beginning to see, a reverse pattern here. I think what we saw with Mara having a retest of $30, multiple occurrences. I think that we're gonna see Mara, start running back up It's been just heavily shorted, especially with MSTR, CleanSpark's earnings report, as well as Mara and Riot's. That's really going to catapult these share prices up here. So I do see potential, $50 to $100 sometime in 2025 here. CleanSpark here, what we talked about, similar deal here. Heavy descendant resistance here. Technicals showing that we're beginning to see that V-shaped pattern, reverse pattern here. I do see that, come early February, we're going to see that retest of $15. Q1 retest that, $18. We're going to see that retest back into that $24 when, CleanSpark early 2024 went from $6 to $24. That's 400% shoot up within a matter of days of trading. So I do think there's going to be that heavy push up with CleanSpark in Q1 here. Let's take a look at Riot. So we talked about the fundamentals of Riot. So the fact that they're potentially positioning into HPC AI, there's going to be a lot of demand for Riot platforms. And good news is that the price action right now at 1354 above the Ichimoku cloud. We're going to see that retest, coming up early February, $15. In fact, it may be very well next week, but what we saw was that prior resistance of $20 back in 2023 July, but we did see in 2024 multiple occurrences of $18 retests. I'm forecasting we're going to see that $18 come up very soon, but that prior resistance that we saw, in 2023, that's going to be met. But just to keep in mind as we scale out here, this share price at one point, that bull cycle, $3 to $80 at one point. So is there going to be a short squeeze 2.0 under Trump 2.0? I wouldn't exclude that. It can very well happen with these miners. Let's take a look at another ETF here. So think of Riot here as Riot on steroids. Let's say if Riot goes up 10%, Riot's ETF will go up by 20%. This was actually created like about 3 weeks ago, but I do think that if you believe in Riot platforms, take a look at Riot's ETF here. It could very well make huge returns. So there you have it. I hope that you found this video valuable in that I covered the technical and fundamental analysis of Bitcoin commodity, where I think the price is going to be in 2025. We talked about latest updates with MicroStrategy, what I believe is happening with MicroStrategy, how high the price will be, along with covering the Bitcoin miners, Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot, sharing with you latest updates with the company and the catalysts that are potentially going to drive the price up to 3 to 5x in 2025, as well as covering the technicals. So if you really enjoyed this video, I would appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing to All I See Is W. I actually have a Shiba Inu. He passed away, not too long ago. So would love the support. Thank you guys.